The boardroom was tense. David, one of Nigeria's wealthiest men, was about to sign away his empire when a little boy burst through the doors. "Don't do it!" he shouted. The room froze. Who was this boy? And how did he dare to stop a billionaire? But when David looked at him, something strange happened. He saw his own reflection in the child's eyes. The truth soon be revealed. 7 years earlier, his wife, Helen, had framed their poor maid and thrown her into the streets, hiding the fact that she carried David's own child. Now, the child they rejected had returned, not only with the power to save David's empire, but with the truth that would destroy Helen forever. Helen lived in a golden mansion, surrounded by wealth and luxury. But she carried a terrible secret. She had no womb. And though her husband, David, the billionaire, longed for a child, she could never give him one. She hid this truth carefully, fearing the day it would be exposed. One afternoon, as she passed through the corridor, she noticed Mary, their poor maid, leaning against the wall with her hand resting on her stomach. Helen's eyes narrowed. She had seen the signs before, but not in her own body. She knew what it meant. Later, she called Mary aside and asked in a cold voice, "Mary, are you pregnant?" Mary trembled, but she could not hide it any longer. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Yes, Ma. It happened the night Sir came home drunk. He mistook me for you, and I was too weak to stop him. I didn't mean for this to happen." Helen's heart pounded in her chest. Her world tilted in an instant. She could already picture the truth tearing her life apart. If David discovered that Mary carried his child, he would abandon her without a second thought. Her fear turned into bitter rage. She thought quickly, and a cruel plan began to form. That night, while the household slept, Helen crept into David's study, took bundles of his money, and carefully hid them inside Mary's bag. The next morning, her scream pierced the air. "Thief! Thief!" she cried. David stormed into the living room to find his wife holding Mary's bag and money spilling out onto the floor. Mary fell to her knees, stunned. "Sir, please, this is not mine. I have never stolen a thing in my life. Please, you must believe me." But Helen wept bitterly, her voice shaking with false pain. "David, this girl has betrayed us. Look at what she has been hiding under our roof." David's face darkened with disappointment. He turned away from Mary, unable to listen to her cries. With one wave of his hand, he ordered her out of the mansion. Mary held her stomach, tears rolling down her face. She wanted to scream the truth, to tell David that the life inside her was his own blood. But her heart failed her. She chose silence, and without a word, she walked out of the gate, alone and rejected, carrying the child of the very man who had thrown her away. Mary walked out of the billionaire's mansion that night with nothing but tears in her eyes and pain in her heart. The same house where she had served faithfully for years had now rejected her. Her feet were bare, her clothes torn, and her stomach heavy with a child. The rain poured down mercilessly, but she had nowhere to go. She wrapped her arms around herself. shivering, whispering, God, please, don't let me lose this baby. She found herself wandering the streets, begging for a place to lay her head. But doors were slammed in her face. Neighbors who once greeted her now mocked her. Some said, "So, the rich man threw you out? That is your reward for thinking you are better than us." Their laughter followed her like daggers in the dark. Each step felt heavier than the last, but Mary refused to break. She pressed her palm against her stomach and whispered to the unborn child, "I will not give up, not for you." Finally, she stumbled upon an uncompleted building. The cold cement floor welcomed her like a cruel bed, but it was all she had. She lay there, clutching her stomach, trying to find comfort in the silence. But what she did not know was that the place was a den for dangerous boys who returned late at night after their evil works. That night, they came in, drunk and violent. They found Mary lying helpless in the corner, like vultures circling a wounded bird. They pounced on her. She cried, begged, and fought, but they molested her, stole the little money she had, and left her bruised and bleeding on the floor. With the last strength in her body, Mary crawled out of the broken building, dragging herself along the road. Her vision was blurred. Her breath was weak, but her will to live pushed her forward. Just then, headlights blinded her eyes. A car screeched and struck her down. As she drifted into darkness, one thought filled her mind. Will my child survive this? When Mary opened her eyes again, the sharp smell of medicine filled her nostrils. Her body ached all over, but she was no longer lying on the cold streets. She was in a clean white bed, her wounds neatly dressed. A gentle voice spoke beside her. "You are awake, thank God." She turned her head slowly and saw a man in a doctor's coat. His eyes were filled with concern. "I almost lost you on that road. You were badly hurt, but you are safe now. Don't worry, I will treat you. You don't need to pay." Tears rolled down Mary's cheeks. For the first time since she had been thrown out, someone showed her kindness. She tried to speak, but her voice was weak. "Sir, why? Why would you help me?" The doctor sighed and shook his head. "Because I couldn't just leave you there. You remind me that sometimes even the strongest fall, and all they need is someone to lift them up." His words broke something inside her, and she wept bitterly, her chest heaving with years of pain. When she was strong enough, she told him her story. She told him how she served the billionaire faithfully, how his wife accused her of theft, and how she was thrown into the street while carrying a child in her womb. The doctor listened in silence, his heart burning with anger at the injustice she had suffered. He clenched his fists, but softened his tone. "No woman deserves this. You need to rest, and you need a safe place for your baby." For a moment, hope flickered in Mary's heart, but it died quickly when the doctor took her to his home. His wife's eyes widened in shock and then narrowed with disgust. "Who is this strange woman? Why did you bring her here?" she shouted. The doctor tried to explain, but his wife refused to listen. The house became a battlefield of harsh words and bitterness. At last, the doctor sighed heavily, reached into his pocket, and pressed money into Mary's trembling hands. "I'm sorry, my wife will never agree. Take this and find another place to stay. It's not enough, but at least it will help you survive." Mary stepped out of that house with tears in her eyes once again. Even kindness seemed fleeting in her world. She was back on the streets, alone, carrying the weight of her unborn child, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. Mary wandered the streets with the little money the doctor gave her, clutched tightly in her hand. She was weak, hungry, and heavy with child, but she refused to give up. Day after day, she searched for work, knocking on doors, begging strangers for a chance. Most people turned her away with harsh words. Some laughed at her, others pitied her, but offered nothing. Her heart broke each time. But she whispered to her unborn child, "I will find a way. For you, I must." One afternoon, she stopped in front of a small roadside restaurant. The sweet smell of cooked food filled the air, and her empty stomach growled. Gathering courage, she stepped inside and begged the woman behind the counter, "Madam, please, I need a job. I can clean, I can wash plates, anything at all. I just need work." The restaurant owner, a plump woman with kind eyes, looked her up and down, frowning. "But you are pregnant. How will you cope with hard work in your condition? I don't think I can take you." Mary fell on her knees, her voice breaking. "Please, madam, I will work with all my strength. I have no home, no family. I only want to survive and give this child a chance to live. Please, don't turn me away." Something in her desperate eyes touched the woman's heart. She sighed deeply and finally said, "Get up. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I will give you a chance. You will stay in the small quarters behind the restaurant. You will share with two other girls." That night, Mary moved into the tiny room with two other workers. One of the girls, Grace, smiled at her warmly. "Don't worry, you will be fine here," she said, offering her a plate of food. But the other, Anita, narrowed her eyes and scoffed. "So now, they are bringing in beggars to share space with us? Let's see how long you last." Mary ignored the sting of her words. She was too grateful to care. For the first time in weeks, she lay on a bed, even if it was small and rough. The days that followed were hard. Mary scrubbed dishes until her hands bled and swept the floors long after others had gone to rest. But she never complained. Her humility and diligence soon caught the eye of the restaurant owner. "This girl is different," the woman said one day. "She walks like she owns this place." Slowly, Mary began to earn trust, and in that little restaurant, she found a fragile seed of a new beginning. Months passed quickly, and Mary's belly grew bigger by the day. Life in the restaurant was not easy, but at least she had food to eat and a roof over her head. Grace often helped her when the work became too much, but Anita's bitterness only deepened. "Look at you, walking around like a saint," Anita would hiss. "We all know you are just a desperate girl, carrying a bastard child." Mary swallowed her tears and endured the insults, whispering to her unborn baby, "Don't worry, my child. One day, all this pain will make sense." The day of delivery came suddenly. Mary screamed in the tiny room, clutching her stomach as the pain tore through her. Grace ran to fetch help, and the restaurant owner called a midwife. Hours later, Mary's months of suffering ended with the cry of a newborn. She held her baby boy close to her chest. Her eyes were wet with tears of both pain and relief. "You are my gift, my reason to keep living," she whispered, kissing his tiny forehead. She named him David, after his father, the man who would never know the truth. To Mary, the name was not just a memory, it was her silent victory, a promise that her son would rise above the shame and rejection she had endured. As days passed, Mary continued working in the restaurant, balancing the sleepless nights of caring for a baby with the harsh demands of her job. But her dedication did not go unnoticed. The restaurant owner began to trust her more, often praising her honesty and hard work. Soon, she made Mary the supervisor of the other girls, a decision that sparked jealousy in Anita's heart. Grace congratulated her warmly, but Anita's smile never reached her eyes. Each passing day, her bitterness grew like poison. One evening, after closing, Anita slipped bundles of stolen money into Mary's drawer. When the owner discovered the missing money, Anita was quick to speak up. "Madam, I saw Mary near your room last night. Maybe you should check her things." Suspicion fled. The woman stormed into Mary's corner and found the planted money. "So, this is how you repay me," she shouted, her voice trembling with rage. Mary fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Madam, I swear, I didn't take it. Please, believe me. Someone is setting me up." But the restaurant owner's heart had already hardened. That night, in the bitter cold, Mary was thrown out with her tiny baby strapped to her back. She cried silently as she walked the dark streets, clutching her son tightly. "It's just you and me now," she whispered through trembling lips. She searched desperately for shelter until she stumbled upon an uncompleted building. Exhausted, she sat in a corner, rocking David gently as he whimpered. Fear gripped her chest. Memories of her past ordeal in another uncompleted building came rushing back. She promised herself she would not sleep too deeply. At midnight, faint voices drifted from behind the building. Mary froze. Straining her ears, she heard the words that made her blood run cold. "That woman and her baby inside. We can grab them and sell the child. It will fetch good money." Her heart pounded in terror. She pressed her palm gently over David's mouth to keep him from crying. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she knew one sound could give them away. Slowly, she removed her slippers, her bare feet trembling against the rough floor. Inch by inch, she crawled towards a broken window. Her breath came in quick, shallow gasps, each one threatening to betray her. Just as the men's footsteps grew louder, she squeezed herself and the baby through the opening. Holding David close, she ran into the bush behind the building, her eyes wide with fear. Branches scratched her arms and legs, but she never stopped. She crouched low in the darkness, trembling as she held David's mouth shut to silence his cries. For hours, she stayed hidden, every rustle of the wind sounding like footsteps. Her body shook with exhaustion, but she refused to close her eyes. She prayed silently, begging God for the dawn to come quickly. Finally, as the first rays of morning sunlight pierced the sky, Mary staggered out of the bushes, her baby still in her arms. She looked weak, dirty, and broken. But in her eyes burned the fierce determination of a mother who would not give up. The morning sun was already hot as Mary walked weakly out of the bushes, her baby still clutched tightly to her chest. Her clothes were torn, her face was pale with exhaustion, and her bare feet swollen from thorns and stones. Every step felt like fire, but she kept moving. "Hold on, my son," she whispered to the baby. "Your mother will not give up on you." Her voice shook, but inside her burned a fierce determination to fight, no matter the cost. For days, Mary wandered the streets again. She begged for food outside shops, sometimes receiving scraps, other times harsh words. Yet, even in hunger, she refused to steal. "I will not curse you with a thief's blood," she told David, pressing her lips to his forehead. Nights were the hardest. She wrapped him with her wrapper and sang soft lullabies to cover the sound of her stomach growling. Each time she thought of her past, the mansion, the betrayal, the restaurant, her chest ached. But she reminded herself, as long as this child lives, I still have hope. One afternoon, after hours of searching for work, Mary sat by the roadside with tears streaming down her face. She had only a few naira notes left in her wrapper. Her baby stared, hungry, and she knew she had to act. With trembling hands, she used the money to buy a small measure of rice, oil, and other ingredients. Then, she borrowed a neighbor's old pot and lit a fire by the roadside and began cooking. As the sweet smell rose, passers-by began to stop. "How much?" one man asked, holding out a note. Mary's heart leapt. That night, she went to sleep with the first money she had truly earned on her own. The next day, she did it again. Then the next. Slowly, she began to gather customers. Soon, people along the street came looking for the woman with the delicious rice. She saved every extra naira she could. Within months, she managed to rent a small one-room apartment in a poor neighborhood. It wasn't much, just cracked walls and a leaking roof, but it was theirs. For the first time since leaving the mansion, she and David had a place to call home. She survived betrayal, hunger, and pain to raise her son. But the story isn't over. In part 2, secrets will be revealed, enemies will return, and a single truth will shake an empire. Watch out for part 2.